We've been here for years. You're watching Game Does of Color Expo 2025, and I am one of your two hosts, the Purple Sharpie, but you can call me Sharpie if you like it snappy. I am here today with the solo and lead game developer of the Crimson Diamond, Julia Minamata. Julia, thank you so much for taking time away from your cabin in the woods to be here with us today.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit more about this project known as the Crimson Diamond.
Sure. The Crimson Diamond is a cozy mystery adventure game set in Northern Ontario in 1914.
Not only are we going to time travel here, we're also going to cut straight to this trailer. Let's roll it. You alluded to it very briefly before we rolled that trailer, but we do time travel back to 1914. Why did you decide to have the game take place in that year?
Part of the reason is this, I think it's a big mystery writer thing where it becomes so much harder to write a mystery when we have the cameras and telephones and easy access to information. So part of the reason why I did that was because I did want to give the player time and space to have to kind of take things into their own hands. There's not a lot of authority figures right in the game. So you have to figure things out on your own because, the police are not going to be coming in, in 20 minutes to help you and figure this all out. So that's part of it. This idea of being somewhere remote that where you don't have access to any other types of resources and you really have to improvise.
Yeah, the world's a lot easier and more convenient to write for murder mysteries without cell phones, of course. Talk to us a little bit more about making it a mystery adventure game. It's very, very similar to an adventure game that I played in my youth, The Secret of Monkey Island. Were you inspired in any way, shape, or form by adventure games like that?
Yeah, The Secret of Monkey Island is probably my favorite adventure game, actually. It was just perfect in terms of the writing and the music and the art. It all kind of came together in this really beautiful way. It's funny because the game that inspired me the most was a game that I was too scared to really play so much as a kid, which was The Colonel's Bequest by Sierra Online, which was a mystery adventure game, and it had a text parser interface. And those were like my things when I was growing up.
I would love a definition for those viewers at home who are not familiar with what a text parser game actually is.
Yeah, and I certainly would not be surprised when people aren't familiar with it. It's not a user interface that we see very much anymore. I mean, probably in the order of 30, 40 years almost by now. But it's my favorite way to input into a game because what you do is if you want to open a door, you type open door and, the character walks over that opens the door. If you want to have a conversation with a character, you can't rely on dialogue trees. You actually have to think about what you want to ask people or talk about based on what they've told you. And I found that much more of an organic way of having a conversation in a game. Especially also when you have to interrogate people and have to ask them questions. You don't get the, possibilities presented to you. That's part of the idea. What I like the most about text parser is this feeling that you have unlimited possibilities and you can try anything. And then sometimes you'll try something completely outlandish and you will get a response from the game. And people have so much delight when they see that, knowing that the developer anticipated something they were going to try.
It's a very exciting aspect of play for players that love narrative design and players that did grow up with that early text parser mechanic inside of the original Commodore or Atari-based games. But I wonder, do you feel as though players may become overloaded or frustrated? Though I have to answer my own question with, what about the hint book? Talk to us about the hint book and the intention of that to assist with some of these aspects of gameplay.
I wanted to reach people who had never played a text parser adventure game before. And I was very aware of the challenges that would mean for people who've never played one. So first of all, I have a tutorial room that kind of walks you through some of the basic commands that you might try to input into a text parser to play the game. But most importantly, I did include like a hyperlink in the main menu to open up in your browser, a hint book, which has like universal hint system style hints to guide you through the game if you do get stuck. Because first and foremost, I wanted people to enjoy this experience, especially if it was a new experience for them. And that I needed to launch with that hint book because of that reason. It was like I was being a representative of this new type of way of playing a game, and I did not want to leave people with a bad impression.
I am so thankful that you put that hint book inside of the game, because I'll tell you right now, I definitely used it more than once. But let's talk about these mechanics that you added. Text parser. That's not something that you can easily accomplish in a lot of engines, but you made it work. Which engine did you use?
I used an engine called Adventure Game Studio. It has been around since 1997, so it's a really old engine, but what's great about it is that it is continued to be updated and maintained by this really wonderfully active community. And part of the engine is a text parser that is right in the engine. I didn't have to program anything. I'm not a programmer. I had to kind of teach myself, with the benefit, of course, of like YouTube tutorials. There is an Adventure Game Studio forums that you can ask people questions. It's been a really perfect way for me I have a Bachelor of Applied Arts Illustration. And for someone with my skill set to actually come in and use an engine that's purpose built to make the exact style game that I wanted to make, made it so much easier. Like I could not have done what I had done without this tool.
You touched very briefly on your history as an illustrator. Is this game also your very first game?
It is. It is my very first game. It took a long time to develop it, and people like to ask me that question, but it's a really hard question to answer, how long it took to develop, because I was working on, contract illustration work during the time. It was just a hobby. It became part-time, and it gradually became something that I was doing full-time, but only in the last 2 years of development. Part-time, maybe like 6 years of development while I was doing a bunch of other stuff. So it's almost impossible for me to actually say how long it took me if I was going to say full-time. And also there was a lot of learning I had to do because I had never made a game before, so I had to learn what that meant, and I had to learn how to use the engine. But I enjoyed the process. I got to say, I enjoyed the entire time I was working on it.
You spoke a little bit about how the time that you put into this project is very difficult to quantify in sequential years, obviously, which I'm certain a lot of other game devs understand and empathize with that story. But then I also have to ask, as the solo game developer for this project, how did you as one person do all of this?
Part of my going to school was this idea that a lot of illustrators, when we were leaving school, there was this understanding that you're going to be like a freelance person, which means you need to be independent and you need to be able to design promotional materials. You need to be comfortable sharing your work on social media and getting feedback. That was all stuff I had kind of taken on board during my education, which I then brought into my game dev career, which was, I'm going to share my work. I started to stream on Twitch the game development process. It was a really nice way for me to kind of take what my skills I had learned and then transport them to this other aspect. And in terms of what my roles on the game were, I did everything except for the music. I hired Dan Polakar, who did an incredible job on the music, but everything else was, just learning as I went. And that's kind of the way I took it. And that's kind of why it did take as long as it did.
What are your thoughts on the current, I don't want to say gaming field as a whole, but the current indie gaming environment, especially as a solo game developer who's marketing her game?
Even I cannot say that I'm 100% a solo indie dev, because I don't think that it actually exists. I had so much help. I mean, people are testing the game, they're porting the game. I did hire some marketing and PR for around launch time for help for that as well. And I credit all these people that have helped me, because nothing can be made in isolation. So even me, who I can say, well, I did most of this stuff. I would never, when questioned about it, say, no, I did everything. No, absolutely not. No, you can't do it that way. Especially for larger projects. It's so important for credit to people, for people to get credited for their work, because it means that they can hopefully get something else next and continue on in the industry, which is what I want to do. And that's how I want to help others as well, is just keep mentioning people and praising them. I want to mention Gary J. Kings did my launch trailer, Dan Polakar did the music, and Mooncat Games did the PR. So I want to credit everyone here right on the spot.
As you should. Love to see credit being given where credit is due. Let's move on to the main event, the Crimson Diamond. Where did the concept for this specific game come from?
It kind of comes from two places, I would say. And I kind of have my mom and my dad to thank for those two different places. My mom, she has these shelves of Agatha Christie novels, like these 70s trade paperbacks. And we watched Columbo in the house. And my mom has always loved mystery stories and movies and TV shows. And that's where I got that love from, this idea of having mystery and true crime and those types of things. And for my dad, it was this introduction. We were early adopters into PCs. So we always had a computer in the house. He would bring home all these games and I got to play them and see what they were all about, especially those adventure games. Those are the ones that really stuck with me when I was really young. And I kind of combined both of those things together to create this one interest where I want to make games. What kind of game do I want to make? I didn't even really have to think about that next part because I knew that I would want to try to make a mystery.
So let's also talk about the unique art style inside of the Crimson Diamond. You actually opt to use pixelated graphics, paying homage to a lot of 16 and 8-bit games made on consoles of yesteryear. What was the intention with that?
For me, it was actually mostly like pure nostalgia because I would just have these really wonderful, like my favorite, fondest childhood memories was playing games that looked like that sounded like that. Like Dan Pollicar did this music. He used a Roland MT32 synth, which was the type of synth that was used back in the day.
I was just about to say that is a classic 80s and 70s synth.
Yes.
You can hear that in like Earth, Wind, and Fire. Yeah. You hear that in Prince's music. You hear that in Michael Jackson's music and the Jackson 5s. That's a very, very common synth from back then.
Oh, yeah. So he just took it upon himself. Like he was really dedicated to helping me recreate this look and the sound. And also for me, I was trying to recreate this type of play style of my favorite types of games that just people weren't making anymore. You don't hear that anymore. You don't see that anymore. And that's why when I was starting this game, it felt natural to me to make exactly what I made. I didn't even really think about how am I going to make this and what is it going to look like or sound like. That's what I wanted immediately.
Well, Julia, I appreciate you sharing these amazing moments of the game with me. But now I have to ask the protagonist, where did her story come from?
Nancy Maypole is she's kind of a pretty stock character. I would say she's your typical super inquisitive, red-headed heroine, really. And I modeled her after, of course, Nancy Drew. Agatha Christie has a character called Miss Marple and Canada, so Maple. That's all I was doing with that. I just kind of smushed a bunch of stuff together to make her. And I honestly didn't really put too much deep thought about what she was going to be like until she was there, because I started this out as just pixel art, just like this. I was just trying to recreate the look of games I loved, and I needed to have a little figure to make the furniture around, so everything was kind of in scale. And I just kind of made a character up without really thinking about it. Again, that's something that just kind of happened really quickly. But then as I started to think about making this a game and further developing it, then I started to imbue Nancy with like ideas of like, where did she come from? What are her parents like? And what does she want to do with her life? She kind of grew from this kind of being just a standard character I just wanted as for a particular purpose in my art. She kind of grew into herself from that process.
Your passion for narrative design and adventure games is very palpable, even on this side of the screen. So I have to ask, when you made a self-insert character inside of this game, I believe her name is Kimmy, what was your thought process and why, outside of the obvious, I want to be inside of my own game, did you put her inside of the game?
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons. One reason is because when we play these adventure games, we kind of have to take the role on of kind of like a very nosy, kind of obnoxious person that's going to just get into everyone's business. And that's not really what my own personality is. And I thought to myself, well, what would I be like if I was actually in that situation? And I'm going to just mind my own business and try to just keep my head above water, just not bother anybody, just trying to get through whatever else is going on around me. That's part of it. Mm-hmm. The other part of it is my own heritage. I'm Japanese Canadian. My dad was born in Vancouver. My grandmother was born in Vancouver. And there's this really long history of having, Japanese Canadians in Vancouver. And I wanted to represent that because it was important to me to show we were around back then, even 1914 back then. Like my grandmother was born in like 1912, I think, in Vancouver. And so that was important to me, as well as Kimmy's a bird watcher, which is something my parents loved doing. And so I wanted to include a bunch, like basically the Crimson Diamond is a bunch of stuff I just love. I just kind of smushed it all together and I kind of put it out as a game.
That's what you're supposed to do. I think we just solved game dev, everybody. Shut it down. We're done. That's the end of this interview. No, but seriously, Julia, this is the end of the interview. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Greatly appreciated.
Thank you so much, Sharpie. This was a fantastic conversation.
We have even more game developer interviews, special panels, and exclusive talks here at GDOC Expo. Stay tuned.